Hello, this is the FreeSoul podcast, and I'm here today with one of my favorite people on the whole planet. This is Stacy G, who has been a representative at the Women of the World Poetry Slam, has slammed all over Sacramento, has been doing wonderful things. Not in COVID times, though.
No.
Very much shut down.
Everything is shut down.
And give a quick hello to the people, if you could.
Hello, people. Hi, listeners. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, yeah, so I guess I'll start off with the easy question, which is, how long have you been doing poetry?
Oh, gosh. I hate this question because it's like I've been doing poetry.
We'll say like in terms of doing open mics.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So my first open mic in Sacramento was in 2017 when I serendipitously walked into Luna's. Turns out there was a slam going on. And they were like, wait, was that an open mic or a slam? I can't remember.
Was it a Friday or a Thursday?
It was a Thursday.
Okay, that would have been an open mic.
Right. Okay.
And you've done all sorts of different things since then, using poetry. Like I said, the Women of the World, but we'll get to that in a second. And I'm just curious, though. So you come in on a Thursday.
Yes.
What made you show up in the first place?
I had just graduated from Chico State. I moved back recently, and I just wanted to find my footing, like in the art scene and then the poetry scene. I had done some open mics. Actually, I have done open mics in Chico. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, in Sacramento, though.
Yeah.
This is your first time.
Yeah. And I don't know. I was just like wanted to see what was out there and have a space to express myself here while I was home, starting anew.
Yeah, and what brought you to Luna's, though, like of all places?
I don't remember. I think I just Google searched open mics, and Luna's was like top search. It had won like best of Sacramento type of thing.
Oh, yeah,
it has that like recognition.
The A-list.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, that's dope. And you write a lot about your personal experience being an Asian American woman, and I'm wondering, this is a question I like to ask I've asked almost everybody on this show, which is, as an Asian American woman in your case, do you feel like your story is being told in America?
Oh gosh, no. Well, it hadn't been for a long time, and I guess more recently because of COVID times, anti-Asian sentiment around the pandemic. There has been more vocal, I guess in my circles or like in my purview, I see like a lot more Asian American actors and actresses, celebrities, people with a huge platform speak out more about this anti-Asian sentiment. And I definitely didn't see that a lot pre-pandemic. It was very sporadic, and it's unless you were looking for it, it wasn't really there. And I was obviously looking for it because I was like, I'm a person too, and I don't identify with any of these stories. So who's telling a story that's similar to mine? And that was like a struggle, the needle in the haystack to try to look to find that before.
Yeah, and it's always interesting how that strife will often bring about the opposition. Mm-hmm. People who will stand up and actually say something instead of just letting it go on.
Right.
And because like you were saying before COVID, it was very much wasn't really hearing anything about any kind of struggles within the Asian community in terms of how they're treated by the rest of the country or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah. So let's see. Oh, here we go. So I have a whole list of questions.
Oh, no.
I prepared. I prepared for this. Believe it or not. So getting more into the what made you start doing poetry side of things, why did you pick poetry? Like, what made you gravitate towards poetry versus any other medium?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I really needed to tell my story. Like, I just had something inside of me and I didn't know how to like really express it. And I found that poetry was most accessible, writing and just expressing myself. And I realized that like, okay, I can write an essay and do a speech, and that's great, but it's not captivating, and it's not really like capturing the essence of like how I was feeling and what I was going through, like the frustration and trying to unravel my own Asian American history, that journey there. And I think that poetry is most accessible because like, oh, do you have a pen and paper? There it is. Like, do you have a phone that can take notes? There it is. Like, now you can do poetry. Do you have a story to tell? Yes, you do. Like, I think everybody has a story to tell, and I just think that like I forgot who said it. I want to say it's Alice Walker, but she had said that like writing is the most accessible art form because you don't need very much, like painting or drawing, or if you're trying to like do a film or music, you know, you need a lot more like supplies or a lot more things around, you know. But if you like want to write your story, you know, pen and paper, pencil, whatever, ink, feather ink. Yeah. You know, not everybody has like access to audio equipment. Not everybody has like access to like paintbrushes and paints, you know, canvases or film, even like good like filming equipment and stuff. So I found that like poetry was the easiest thing for me to tell my story. And also it's great because it's like, oh, here's 3 to 5 minutes of me talking, not interrupted, and let me just say the things I need to say and then leave, you know. And it's either recorded or not recorded, or, you know, it comes in like various forms and is accessible to various forms. So I found that poetry was just most accessible to me. Yeah, and it's just like raw. It's like just me there on the mic writing the words and saying the words.
And you don't have to worry about someone else's style coming into it. Like if you're a filmmaker, you have to worry about how the actor is going to portray your words or your direction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like I wrote the words, I created the thing, and then I'm saying and like saying the things that I want to say, and people will take it how they will. But I think that, yeah, exactly. Like with film, it's actors or actresses may or may not portray like the message or the essence that you're trying to say.
Yeah. And the other beautiful part about poetry that I love is that you can really see the story within the story, which is your growth as a writer throughout the whole time. So like, how would you describe yourself when you started versus how you are right now?
Oh gosh. When I first started, like the only thing that I really saw was like angry poetry. So I was like trying to channel like all of my frustration and all of like, you know, the unraveling, as I said, of the Asian American history and the Asian American story. And I think in the beginning I was like more about like, this is really angry. Like, this is very political, very socially conscious. And nowadays I find myself writing like love stories or like about healing and about like my journey. And in the beginning I was like writing really long poems, and then I realized that like the audience's attention span and also like my need to perform for that long straight is so long. Like, yeah, the attention span is short, but then like me performing is a very long time. So I wrote like 6-minute poems, 7-minute poems. Oh, wow. Yeah.
I kind of want to hear one of those.
Oh, actually, yeah, the ABC poem was actually like 7 to 8 minutes. Joke. Yeah, 7 to 8 minutes. But now cutting it down for slam purposes, and also just getting more to the point instead of this long drawn out thing, became it just like refined my poetry a lot more.
Yeah, no, that's kind of the story behind my alien poem, the Finding Home in Your Mars. No kidding. It used to be like 5-6 minutes long.
No kidding.
Yeah, and I would slam it, and then Jenny would come up after the slam and go, Jenny Davison, wonderful, hi mom. But she'd come up afterwards and go like, all right, so that's a time penalty, just to let you know. So I ended up shortening it, which on the point that you made, making it more concise for people to be able to understand exactly what's going on, hit your points, and get out. It's something that people don't consider when it comes to writing a lot, which is the editing side.
Yeah.
How much editing do you feel like you do now versus back then?
Ooh, yes, that's a great point, because I definitely do way more editing and refining than I did back then, and actually like practicing my poems instead of like going out and just reading whatever I wrote. And I was like, wow, this is garbage. No. In the middle of your poem, the realization of like, I am talking too long. That last line sucked. I should have.
You see, like in the back row, people are just pulling up their phones.
Yes. Yeah. Or like people's like furrowed brows, like, wait, trying to understand. Not because you said something very profoundly deep, but because you just jumbled words together. Definitely editing a lot more and going back over and over. Oh gosh, I've done like the ABC poem. I feel like there's maybe like 6 or 7 additions to that poem. So yeah.
And in terms of your performance, like especially, I haven't been able to see you perform in about a year and a half, but you did Women of the World Poetry Slams shortly before, and it was beautiful being able to work with you and Jeanette, who we interviewed last week. If you're on the podcast, if you keep a track. But like being able to work with you and Jeanette on the performance side and really seeing you grow in that way. And I don't know, like I want to ask the egotistical question of like, did anything I do help? Like, does it stick with you? But I guess, how does it feel performing now versus when you started?
Oh yeah, I do want to say that thank you. Because I was
not trying to beg for the
fish for the compliment.
Exactly.
Reeled me in. I was really grateful for that experience, for one, because I think like I didn't take poetry very seriously. It was more like a leisure thing or something for fun. But being part of that competition really put a mirror in front of my face of like competitive poet now. I never really saw myself as that competitive, and I've done a lot of slams, but I never really felt like I deep dived into my poetry in that competitive essence. So like you, Shona, I talked to Brandon, I talked to Ike Torres. It was very helpful to have that that opportunity to like continuously refine my poem. Like and the fact that like the exercises that you helped me and Jeanette go through, the like the tips like of like, hey, like, try to show us instead of just tell us, right? Volume, just as a performer, like you sat in the back of a room and you're like, I want to hear you from here. I was like, oh well, great.
That was old improv little tune-ups basically when I started doing improv, because I was a very quiet person when I started, and so it was I believe it was Matt Russell. Shout out to Matt Russell, who he went behind the wall of the theater we were in, and he goes, I want to be able to hear you from here. And I'm like, are you sure? Is that too loud? I feel like I'm yelling. But and different emotional exercises to get just like try things out with poems. That's kind of always a good thing to do if you're a listener who's curious about performing poetry. Just try different emotions out, see how they fit. Sometimes one fits that you didn't think would. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think like I learned to really speak from like my gut rather than just my heart. And so it was definitely digging a lot deeper for that voice and that volume to express the poem, because it comes out much more with like oomph. So that was really helpful, and that was a really good journey too, because I think I grew so much in such a short amount of time. And I mean, like, from your aspect, I'm kind of wondering, when are we going to get a Stacy G one-person show? Oh, that was never in my... Yeah, I know. But, like, I think you could hit, like, a 30-minute set and be absolutely wonderful the whole way through. Like, I would love to hear a full breadth of what you do, because sometimes in slam, I've noticed, at least with my work, I tend to get pigeonholed into like, do this poem, and there's certain poems that we believe work better than others for slam. Yeah. So like for me, I focus a lot on my heritage and on, well, being fat and, body ownership. And I guess the question is, do you feel like you fall in similarly?
Oh,
choosing certain poems because
yeah.
you feel like they'll work?
Yeah, definitely. I think slam is much more about digging into the emotional aspect of the poem rather than like just your story and what resonates well with the audience versus like what's resonating with you at the time. And I think definitely I have chosen certain poems to do at slams because they are always received well. They get higher points. I'm most confident with them. And also the difference between like a slam here in Sacramento versus
How would you define that?
slam and oh gosh, it's really one thing that I realized was that at Women of the World Poetry Slam, I was getting like 8s and 9s and almost 10s, and in Sacramento like I hadn't been getting too much like of those scores, like maybe like 8s and 7s and 8s, and so to kind of get judged by other poets by your getting your poems judged by other poets was really affirming for me. Just as a performer, as a writer, that it was like, okay, these people know what a good poem is and they liked it, and you should continue doing the thing.
It's not like a random person in a juice bar who's just kind of like having a good time.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, are they sauced or not? Are they feeling this or not? Like, yes, exactly.
Makes a huge difference.
It does.
And that's something that people forget a lot that I try to bring up is that slam. So for those of us who don't know, the 2 people who are listening to this who don't know, which are out of 3 listeners, slam is basically you have 5 random judges. They kick off the highest score, they kick off the lowest score, and they add in the 3 in the middle, and that's your score for the round. And multiple rounds of that, and sometimes the judges who show up are just random people who happen to be there. So you never know what mindset they're in. You never know really what their preference of poetry is, how they approach poetry in the first place. Yeah. So it's always interesting, and it could be very easy, kind of like what you were saying, to judge yourself based off of random people's judgments.
Right. Yeah. Imagine if you're like just a street performer and stuff, and you just like chose randomly like 3 people from the street, and you're like, okay, this is what I'm getting judged on. Like your opinion matters, so you determine whether I should move on or continue doing this thing. And it's a mess, a hot mess.
And something that Jeanette brought up that I think was interesting is that, like, for her, when she went to Women of the World Poetry Slam, she made friends and she felt like she won. Yeah. From that aspect. Did you make a lot of friends out there? Did you get to talk to people?
I did make a lot of connections, social media connections, and that was really helpful. I feel like me and Jeanette really grew, our relationship grew. And that's what was really powerful for me. That's the biggest takeaway.
Just so you know, she said the same thing when she was just putting that out there. Would have been really funny if she came on the show. She was like, "Yeah, I knew Stacy was there or whatever."
She's like,
my best friend.
She's like, I can't talk to Stacy ever again while I'm here. Like, it's like you're the one-sided like best friend. Like, she's my best friend, but I'm not her best friend. I'm glad it's mutual.
Let's see. So, kind of similar to the topics that we were talking about before. Well, not the. Kind of similar to what we had discussed recently. Is there a topic of a poem that you just haven't approached yet that you're trying to figure out?
Yeah, I think right now with the COVID, with the pandemic, anti-Asian sentiment, a lot of my old poetry already speaks to that, about like identifying as Asian American, as showing like the historical discrimination, showing that like, hey, we're still put into this neat little box, expectations versus reality, the complexities of like the community of being Asian. Like, how many billions of people does that encompass? And like, that's really funny because somebody was telling me that like, oh, I have 2 kids, but they're as different as night and day, and I'm just like, and obviously me just centering myself in the conversation, it was like, you have 2 kids who are like from the same family, from like the same community background, blah blah blah, but then like you at the same time you're like trying to lump billions of people together, and when you understand that like two people can be so different, then you should also like maybe understand that billions of people are just different from one another, you know, like how many different forms and personalities and personas and likes and dislikes and those types of things, you know. So it's very hard for me to hear people like say, oh, it's like, you know, night and day, like, you know, brother and sister are so different. And I'm like, yeah, well, people in the same community, there's more difference within a community than like between communities, you know?
Yeah. Like, I mean, even me and my brothers, we're all very different people.
Right.
Even though we have some similar qualities, like we all look like my dad. but and even then, like, the designation of Asian has always been a strange one to me.
Yes.
Like, even I remember as a kid, I thought like, but there's like literally billions of people
yes,
who were just going, oh yeah, you're Asian. I'm really shocked that we haven't refined that more.
Yeah. There is a movement to disaggregate the data, you know, instead of saying like Asian, you know. Now there's like South Asian, Southeast Asian, Eastern Asian, Middle Eastern Asian, and then like, of course, like Russia, the Asiatic country, the country in like the Asiatic continent or whatever. So yeah, there is a movement to like really break that down, because like data just doesn't tell the whole story, you know. Like some people come from war-torn countries, some people are migrated here because their parents got scholarships to like work at a university, you know.
Drastically different climates, which produce drastically different ways of living.
Right, exactly. You know, and like some people don't have a country, and like there's a difference, like different waves of immigrants that come here for different reasons, and understanding like it's as different as like, I don't know, northeastern United States or something and southeastern United States. Yeah.
Like to say someone from New Hampshire versus Florida versus California is the same is a little ridiculous.
Yeah, from somebody from like Japan and India and like Afghanistan or something. Yeah, exactly.
So well, I'm looking forward to hearing those words come out of you.
Oh, thank you.
Find them.
There's actually another poem I'm really trying to work through, and it's right now Myanmar, where my parents are from, is going through like a military dictatorship takeover. So there's like a poem there that it's complicated.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it. Have you been able to go to Myanmar?
Never. Yeah. I was like, oh, one day I go. And then like pandemic hit. And I was like, oh, I should have gone. And then military dictatorship took over. Oh, I should have gone. Like,
now they'll change the name and you'll be like, ah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And on a whole other cultural side, I don't know how comfortable you are going into all of this, but I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about your practice as someone who's Buddhist.
Yeah, I love going into Buddhism.
Okay, like... well, perfect. Yeah, because I haven't heard poems of yours that mention it, at least very much. Is that a topic that you just kind of naturally don't gravitate towards, or is that something that I just haven't heard yet?
Oh, I think it's something just you haven't heard yet.
Okay, yeah. I'm thinking.
It's a lot of healing, a lot of like talking about like love existing there before like, you know, you acknowledge it. About like just sitting with your emotions and just sitting with like who you are as a person, self-acceptance.
Has that been a lifelong practice for you, or is that something you got into?
Something I got into more recently. So my journey with Buddhism
please do the whole thing.
I don't know if I've ever told this story. Was that like my parents and we had been like peripheral Buddhists, where we like identify as being Buddhist, but like we don't know what that really means. We're just like saying we are, but like just I don't know. Like if you were like, what is Buddhism? It's like Buddha was a person, taught Buddhism, then he died, and then now we're still like that's the extent of our knowledge.
As a former Catholic, there's a lot of Catholics who could similarly identify.
Really? And then I guess 2014, 15 or so, my dad started really getting into into Buddhism, going to the monastery that used to be located in Elk Grove, volunteering there, asking questions to the monks there, really like deep diving into it. My practice was more like going to a meditation retreat, like 2016, 17, something like that. Yeah. And that's when I was like, oh, I'm now a Buddhist. Like I understand and I get it. Now I definitely like believe in like about Buddhism. And it was a lot like before I thought it was very like spiritual, where it's just like, okay, you have to like pray to Buddha, you have to like offer incense, you have to like you have to like do certain things, and everything was bad karma. Like don't do that or else you're gonna get bad karma. Like that was like the extent of what it was a lot of fear based stuff.
Yeah. Again, as a Catholic, former Catholic, I can definitely mix with that. Well, shoot, for our listeners who are listening, often we hear about karma from a very California perspective of like, if I don't hold the door open for you, like that's bad karma. Mm-hmm. What is karma?
Oh, yeah. So the word karma is actually like a Pali word. Pali is like the language of the Buddha. And he said like karma is more like your actions. Mm-hmm. So what you do to other people is like your karma, but what other people do to you is their karma. So and karma, like, okay, so like the word karma itself is action, but then like the law of karma is like cause and effect, if that makes sense.
So in a way, what you do to others is a statement about yourself.
Right. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And a lot of people are like, get the misconception and like it's like predeterminism, like oh, it's because of my karma that I have like I live in this way and I have to be this way and etc. And Buddha was like, no. You have autonomy, you can decide, you have to think and like realize your actions have consequences. There's autonomy, there's self-responsibility, there's like learning like, oh, I don't know what's good and what's bad, like, well, go find out. Question it, like make sure that it makes sense to you, like is it something that you can identify and test for yourself and see like actual effects of it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so to clear this up, because this is still something that I hear frequently, is Buddha a god? Just clear.
What?
Yeah, like there's a lot of people out there who think Buddha is like a god that people pray to as like a deity.
Yeah. I guess you'd have to like define what God is. Like he's not like he doesn't determine like what your fate is going to be, right? He doesn't like create anything for you. My understanding is that Buddha is a teacher. Like he teaches you like what are good things and what are bad things, and he teaches you like how to go about like, oh, if you like want to be a like good child or something, then you take care of your parents, if you have like a good relationship with your parents. And like Buddha is not necessarily a god where you think that like he can create things or like he is going to like determine like you go to hell and you go to heaven. You're going to be reborn as an animal or not,
Because that's such a common refrain from especially Judeo-Christian minded people. When they hear about Buddhism and they hear about Buddha, they go like, oh, so Buddha is the God that they pray to the same way that I prayed to God up there.
Jesus.
Give me this Cadillac, please. So I guess to flip gears, because we are coming towards the end, I try to keep these about 30 minutes.
What?
I know, like it's sped by. I looked at the clock. I was like, oh, and I fail horribly every time I keep it at 30 minutes. But in terms of the Sacramento poetry scene, there's obviously during COVID everything shut down, but under normal circumstances, what's something that you would change about the poetry scene if you could?
I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to say. I don't really feel as immersed into the Sacramento poetry scene as like to be able to criticize it or like to be able to say like this should change and this should not change and like
but that's something valid in and of itself.
Yeah.
Like what Is it a lack of desire on your part to become more immersed, or is it that you just don't know how to get more immersed?
I think it's part of it is like a lack of desire to try to get more immersed into it. Yeah. What do I want to change about? I guess like more poetry shows. I think like poetry can be an opening act to everything, like like to music, to like festivals, to I don't know, like a farmer's market, or like poetry is very versatile. So I wish that there would be like more opportunities for poets to come out, and it kind of seems like a lot of poets have to like create those opportunities. You know.
Well, it's like what I always used to say about like stand up. If you do stand up, it's not a specific like 1-to-1, you do this then you get this, but there is a pathway made for you. You do open mics, and then you get invited for features, you get paid for features, and you get invited to host. You move out to the areas around you, to different cities, and it just continues and grows from there if you're doing it right. And with poetry, kind of feeding off of what you're saying there, it's very much, there's no system for it. There's no final destination of like, if you do all this, you'll get a late night TV show. Doing spoken word.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a blessing and a curse in that you can make your own path and do literally anything with it. Like, I mean, which you were a part of the Spoken Word Federation.
Yes.
When we ran that show, combining pro wrestling with spoken word. It's weird shit. The advantage of spoken word is that you can be weird like that because people don't know what to expect. Yeah. I feel like that
was so fun because you made it like a competition, but it wasn't really like a competition. It just like had that guise of a competition, like head to head, one-on-one, you know?
I really wanted to capture, in terms of the backstage stuff, kind of the vibe of actual pro wrestling, which is like, we're all in this together. We're here to make a good show first and foremost, and really whoever wins, it doesn't matter because it might as well be pre-decided. But in this case, there was like audience applause, and again, random judges. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Like, we're all dope, and the reason why I invited everyone here, very carefully chose who pairs with who. It's because I was like, I know you'll work together. There won't be beef afterwards. Bullshit. Because that would have broken my heart the most, is if we had left the show and it's like you and Shonuff were kind of like
like that poem was trash, like how could you have gotten that beauty pageant status? Like
gosh. Well, I guess I'll ask this last question, and then we'll kind of descend out of the 2 more questions. Okay, I'll dig up a second one while you're answering this one. So we'll go. What's your currently at the moment? You've had a lot of free time. Have you been reading poetry at all? And if so, what's your favorite poets who you've been reading?
Oh, okay. I have been reading Alicia Harris, who is a phenomenal East Coast poet. She just her metaphors and her double meanings and like her homonyms, like just it blows my mind. So I have her book, and I've been reading it out loud just to get the essence of like the spoken wordness of it. Right? It's like one thing when you just read it and hear it in your head versus like you read it out loud. It gives like a special effect to it, I guess. And let's see, who else I've been listening to Jeanette's stuff. Like she sends me her poems and she writes to me, and just her, I think she's a brilliant writer in all essence, honestly, because she really, you can just like identify with what she's writing, and her essence of like joy and healing and like believing in love, and everything that she writes is beautiful. Like she's a really smart writer. And I really like appreciate her. Who else is there? Oh gosh. There's also Brandon Leake, of course. Like watching his videos. He also does like a lot of helpful videos for poets who like want to get into more like professional artists. Like, what does that mean? Yeah. Which I love that he does that for the community.
I love
invaluable.
that. Like, he won AGT, he won America's Got Talent, and a lot of the times when people win those kind of events and they start getting bigger opportunities, they can get a little full of themselves and they can do this and that and start acting like they're holier than thou. And I love that Brandon's pretty much the exact same person as he was before.
Yeah.
And that same giving, loving person.
Yeah, super humble, super never forgets his roots. He checks in with me every once in a while.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's always giving back too. Yeah, is important.
Well, in this time I've been able to find one more question to ask you, which is, can I have a high five?
Yes.
Perfect. That has been the Free Soul Poetry Podcast. I've been here with the wonderful Stacy G. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to record the poem. And you take care of yourselves. It's towards the end of COVID. I'm pointing off into nobody right now because I'm a very emotive speaker when I do a podcast for some reason. But make sure you're taking care of yourselves, and I hope you have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.